Hello, people out there on the internet. We are live once again. It's Wednesday morning. I come to you most Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. In Belfast. To do another discussion show. Generally, sometimes it's a rant, occasionally a concert on the last Saturdays of the month, but on most days it's an interview with some very interesting person. And these go out on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. And if you are watching on any of those platforms, please take a moment to perhaps share the screen with folks on your news feed if you think other people might be interested in watching this interview or any of them. They're all archived at youtube.com/drovics and in podcast form if you look for This Week with David Rovics wherever you get your podcasts, and also at davidrovics.com. And today, I'm very happy to have with us for the hour Kevin Neish, who I first met many, many years ago now. And Kevin is, in fact, a red diaper baby and a longtime activist, in fact, possibly lifelong in Canada, Canadian activist, organizer, and he's traveled all over the world and been involved with a whole lot of very interesting situations, which we're going to talk about. And I'm just going to bring Kevin onto the screen right here now. Kevin, that was my very ham-handed introduction without lots of notes and lists of awards you've received and all that. Kevin, you were just up in Port Renfrew. Can we start with talking about what's going on up there? Because that looked very interesting. Also related to what was happening just before the pandemic hit, when all the railways across Canada were shut down by action taken by people across the country. And that it sounds like a continuation of that, very much a continuation of what was going on with that. And I want to bring us up to speed on what's going on.
Yeah, I've got a piece of property in Port Renfrew, which is about 2 hours west of Victoria on the west coast of the island, and there's a valley there called the Fairy Creek Valley, and it's really difficult, inaccessible. So even though that whole area has been logged 2-3 times, they've never logged this valley. It's pristine, it's untouched, because the loggers couldn't physically get in there with the old style equipment. So anyways, now they last year our socialist left-wing, supposedly NDP government approved the logging of this valley, and it's the last untouched valley in southern Vancouver Island. And so they some activists, some from Washington, and all over BC and actually across Canada now, they've set up blockades to stop the logging roads from being punched into the valley, and they've been manning these blockades for the full year, right through the winter, deep snow, ice, freezing temperatures, and they've kept this 24/7 every day. Yeah, I think it's Fairy Creek Blockade.com, I believe is the. You can just Google it. So yeah, that's what's going on. It's a beautiful area, and it's actually a spiritual area for the natives. There's an elder there, Bill Jones from the Pachidat band right in Port Renfrew, and he talks about taking trips up through the valley as a spiritual quest when he was a kid. So. He's supporting it, and there's other Native folks supporting it, and the BC Indian Chiefs Assembly, they've voted that they want this valley untouched, and it's like I've been up there since '93, and I've been watching as they've sort of had a mad scramble to log off the San Juan Valley, that's the river valley that the Fairy Creek flows into. So I've been watching them, stripping it bare bit by bit by bit, as far as I can see from my cabin up the valley.
Are they logging with helicopters?
Sometimes. Usually it's yarders and just the old-fashioned blast a road in. Like that's what they're doing in Fairy Creek. They're blasting roads in from 2 different directions to get into the valley. So I've been watching this clear cutting, and I've figured out. I believe what's going on is that the Pachudet band in Port Renfrew, they've been in treaty negotiations for years, many years. And from what I'm seeing, I suspect that the logging companies in cahoots with the government, they're trying to strip the last of the old growth forest out, so that when they sign the treaty and they hand the land back to the to Pachudet First Nation, they'll hand them back a bunch of bare hillsides. So the
long tradition there with that particular practice, huh?
no, it's really despicable from what I can see. And it's causing
And what's
flooding. But go ahead.
flooding, right? All the logging of especially on steep hillsides, as people hopefully are aware, but it
Yeah,
causes a lot of flooding, and then of course that's also why it's more with the steep hillsides. It's more difficult to do the logging, and more dangerous, more erosion, more flooding,
yeah,
and and then like for people from the U.S., probably most of the audience, I guess, who might not be aware. I mean, there's like three major political parties across Canada, right? And the NDP is the one furthest to the left, and I imagine there's a lot of people very disappointed if the NDP is signing off on this logging of
yeah.
clear cutting of old growth. What's the end? I mean, what kind of impact is that having on the sort of in sort of parliamentary left circles, I guess you could say, in BC? I mean, there must
And
be a lot of people upset.
well, disillusioned. Well, I'm not disillusioned. I'm like you said, a red diaper
You're
baby. My dad was yelling at the TV when I was a little kid. And, I understand what this is all about. Now I'm yelling at the TV.
Yeah, that's right.
Goddamn
Talk about that.
bastards!
What's the where'd your dad had your dad was your was your dad's family also political? Is it multi generations going way back? Of course, there's a tradition of radicalism in BC, going way
Yeah,
back. But of course, the 1918 general strike in Victoria is a particularly notable occasion, which was probably your grandparents' generation, I guess.
yeah, yeah. No, it's Oh yeah, mom and dad are both Marxist, communist. Dad was a hardline Stalinist, Communist Party member. Mom was a independent feminist Marxist. So they agreed on a lot of things, but there were some real good shouting matches at the kitchen table between the two factions. But yeah, no, my mom, her her grandfather was a Finnish fellow that came. Well, mom and dad, grandparents, whatever. They came over and they created the a Finnish commune in Saintula, a left wing. Uh, Anyways, you can just Google Saintula and it'll tell you
Were
all about it.
your grandparents? Now, a lot of people. I mean, this is history that I've only just recently learned. But a lot of people who have spent much time on the West Coast in either Canada or the U.S. If you're walking around in a lot of the old port towns, you'll notice the presence of Finnish cultural centers, and you'll notice the presence of red stars on those Finnish
Yeah,
cultural centers. And it's if you're looking around, you quickly realize that there's a serious tradition of Finnish left wing activism in the United States and in Canada. And then if you look into it further, you find out that one of the reasons for that is that so much of the Finnish immigration to the U.S. in the early 20th century were the left wingers who lost the Finnish Civil War.
yeah, yeah.
Was that
Actually,
your family's
yeah.
story?
Well, that's actually leads to an interesting little story. I tried to research my Finnish roots and going back through whatever all the records and whatnot, and I simply couldn't find them. I couldn't find anybody. The family name was Holmanen. I searched and searched and searched, couldn't get any. And finally, a Finnish fellow in Lapua, he walked down to the church registry and did a search for me physically with the old church records. And it turned out my great grandparents changed their name when they
Ah,
came over on the boat.
common practice. Yeah.
Yeah, so they were Mustama. in Finland, and I guess to wipe the slate clean and to keep the Tsarist police off their ass, they changed their name. And when they arrived in Canada, they were Holman, which would be 2 generations back in Finland. Would have been their great grandparents. That's a name to use. Anyways, nothing's changed.
They're still the Finns the descendants of the Finnish communists are still communists.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. I'll have to change my name.
Where's the name Neish come from? What's the background of Neish?
Oh, it's Scottish. It's
okay.
Scottish. Yeah, there's not many around. It seems the niches in Scotland, they were always fighting the king, always fighting on the wrong side and losing.
So they didn't populate. They didn't increase in number.
No, yeah. they got wiped out over and over and over again. So there's very few niches around. There's a few, but yeah, it's in my genes. I can't help it, I guess.
I love it. And so and just getting back to the logging in Port Renfrew, I know I'm often accused of skipping around and just the logging isn't really going to be happening in a big way until things warm up a bit, right? I mean, it's not like they're actually logging right now in the winter, are they?
Yeah. No, they're not. They would have been road building right now. They would have been blasting and whatnot. That'd be the basics. Be preparing for it. But these, like I say, these activists, they started on one road, and then the logging company went to the other side of the valley and tried to blast a road in from the other side, the west side, and they took another camp, split the camp in half, sent them over to the other side, and stopped them. And then it was all cool. The logging company went away, but they went away to another old growth area in the Walbrand on the west coast of the island. Right next to the Pacific Rim National Park. So the activists they bought a bus and they chased the logging company over there. So I think they had as many as 4 blockades going at once. I think now it's down to 2 again. But they've really been a thorn in the side of the logging company. It's been good. So yeah, I haven't been on the front lines too much. But I've been I'm a mechanic, so I've been repairing their vehicles, and they needed they wanted a hot water shower, so we rigged up a wood burning water boiler, and I set up a pump on 12 volts and a shower, and yeah, it's like a Club Med there. They got hot water showers and indoor kitchen. Yeah, it's good.
And Kevin, I think it's your role within many different social movements around the world as a mechanic. I mean, it's a really interesting sort of way to play a part in things that are happening, isn't it? I mean, I know other people who also have played, kind of a similar role in other social movements. I'm thinking of Rick Fellows in Olympia, Washington, the bus mechanic, who went on so many Pastors for Peace caravans to Cuba.
Yep, I met him at the border.
Yeah, and what a way to be participating in a movement, largely spending your time covered in grease under a bus, but it's and in your case it's often in a boat, because your expertise is you're a boat mechanic. I mean, as well as a land vehicle mechanic.
Yeah, I'm a marine engineer, so I guess I've been on 4 flotillas to Gaza, and 3 of them I was the engineer on board. So yeah, it's actually it's an interesting, if we can talk a little politics from the old days, when my great grandparents set up the communal society in St. Tula, they invited Finns from all over the world to come and join it and be an active part in this, basically turning this rugged island on the upper end of Vancouver Island, the little island, Malcolm Island, and turning it into a socialist commune. But what happened was they had lots of people coming, but they weren't working stiffs. They were shoemakers, they were accountants, bookkeepers, they were any number of things, and there were very few loggers, farmers that could till the ground, And so, and that, to some degree, that was the downfall of the whole thing, was that these people came and they didn't have the skills to clear the land, didn't have the skills to cut down the trees to get the thing started. But anyway, so along that line, when I go on these, wherever I go, inevitably, even though I'm just a lowly mechanic, inevitably my skills are called on. Whether a bus breaks down during election observing in El Salvador, or in Palestine, I had to repair all the door locks on the apartment because the keys didn't work, and then on the ships, I was able to keep the ships running to get to Gaza, and then I had the skill to sabotage them when the Israelis attacked the ship, so they couldn't run them, which infuriated the Israelis. They were fit to be tied.
Oh, I love it. Then they couldn't steer the ships. That's
No, it was all set up. I went down, and the Swedish captain, he told me, he says, "Okay, Kevin," he says, you disable this the second that the Israeli, when you see his foot come through the door, because they're using an axe to cut through the door to get into the onto the bridge to take command. And he said, when you see a foot come through that door, when you're on the bridge with me, you go down to the engine room, and don't tell me how. He says, but you make sure this engine will not run, but you got to make it so that I can take over the engine, or I can take over the ship within 1 minute in case there's any difficulty. So you can't do it permanent. You just have to do it long enough. So I whipped down below, and I shut off a couple of valves for the fuel and the cooling system and whatnot, and the power to the engine. They went upstairs, and then they herded us all on. They took over the ship, and they herded us all onto the front. And anyways, and then they couldn't do a thing.
They didn't know how to get it going again.
They had 4 big warships circling us, and they had a whole, like I say, they had a couple of dozen soldiers on board, and they were going crazy because they couldn't figure out what to do, and they were just getting madder and madder and madder. And finally, they brought the captain in and ordered him to. Do you mind the story? Is this okay?
Oh, this is perfect.
Yeah. So they hold the Swedish captain into the galley, and gave him the didn't touch him, but they yelling and shouting and angry, and he refused. He says no. He says I don't know what's wrong. I got no idea. He says it's your ship.
I'm just the captain.
Yeah,
right.
you took over the ship. It's your ship now. You do it. It's not my problem. It's your ship. You took over. You wanted the ship. It's yours. There you go. And we're sitting right in the middle of the main shipping lane into the Suez Canal at that point, off of Egypt. So there's ships going by and all these Israeli warships circling us. So anyways, they figured out that the engineer was the guy that could figure it out, and they haul me in there, and there's this fat, pudgy Israeli officer. It turns out he was a psychologist. That's what I was told. It was mind games and whatnot that he was playing, but trying to convince us to cert the ship. And there was 2 soldiers in there. So one soldier holds me in, another soldier is sitting next to the captain, then the whatever level he was, an officer. And he says to me, he says, I know. He says, now the secret's up. He says, you're the one that knows how to start the ship. You're the one that sabotaged it. So you must start the ship. And I pointed at him. He says, I take orders only from the captain, and you're not the captain. He says, this ship is not going anywhere. Says, that's the end of that. And he's then he looks at the captain and says, okay, then says, captain says, you will order him to start the ship for us. And the captain says, well, F you. I'm not sorry. We're not going to do that. So anyways, the officer says, take the engineer out of here. So he hauls me out into the hallway. And about a minute later, he gets called back in. When I stepped back in, the captain's got his head on the table, and his hair is all mussed up, and his head's on the table, and he raises his head. He says, "Kevin, start the engines for them." And I said, "What? What are you talking about? What's going on here?" Well, what the bastards had done, it was a steel ship, steel bulkheads. The soldier had grabbed the captain's head and whacked it against the bulkhead, the back of his head.
Oh my
bang,
God.
bang, bang. Yeah. And that was the red line. That was the acknowledged red line within our group, was that once, I didn't really agree with it, well, whatever. But once there was violence against anybody, then that was the red line. You had to cooperate. So they like I said, they beat his head against the wall, and he said, start the engines. And so I went down below, and they were following me like a bunch of puppies. There all these guys are down in the engine room, and they're following me along here, watching me. And I reached up, and I took the key. Basically, it's a master key. It's just the keys for the engine. So I took the key off the top of the fuel tank, right next to it, lifted up a deck plate, reached up, put the key in the slot, turned the key. It's there. And they're outraged because it was so effing simple. They couldn't. The mighty Israeli army couldn't figure out to put the key in the ignition. And in the meantime, they had dragged one of these huge batteries. It takes 2 men to carry. They dragged one of these batteries from the top of the ship outside all the way down 2 staircases into the engine room, and they were trying to jumpstart the engine by hand. 24-volt engine. And they're trying to use one 12-volt battery to start it. So they had sabotaged it themselves. Even though I turned the key and started it or got it ready, they couldn't start it because they had disconnected all the batteries. So I had to I got to order the Israelis. It says, you got to take that battery back up top. And, oh, yes. And they grabbed the battery. They hooked it back up the stairs. Then it was heavy. It took 3 guys to get it up the stairs, all the way up these 2 flights of stairs on the top of the ship and back into place. And I put the terminals on, and they turned the key immediately when I put the terminals on. I guess the lights went on in the bridge, and that asshole captain, he turned the key and started the engine up. But so I followed his rule. He says, you must start the engine. So the captain says, start the engine for him. So I started it, but I didn't open up all the cooling valves because he didn't ask me to do that. So within a half an hour, it was going to overheat and shut down again.
Excellent.
Well, but I went down, and the guy, the soldier with me, I said, okay, I got to report to the captain. No. He says, we're finished with you. We don't need you anymore. Just
perfect.
Else.
Oh, excellent.
I said, no. It says, you don't understand. It says, I have to report to the captain because I've done his order. I have to report back that the order is done. Otherwise, your engine's going to shut down again. And he's, oh, okay. So anyways, long story short, I told the captain what else had to be done. And he says, open everything up. So I went back down and opened all the cooling lines and the fuel lines. And anyways, enough war stories. What else?
No, war stories is the secret is that's exactly what I'm here to try to get from you, Kevin. we can talk. Yeah, well, the hour format is always nice because there's enough time for a couple of stories. But and of course we could be here all day, but then we have to break it up into hour segments. Otherwise, we start losing people. I find.
Well, I could tell you about the Torreira when I was engineer on that one.
Oh my goodness! Yes, please. Engineer stories. Yes, more.
I was on the Canadian boat, the Gaza, the Torreira. Hold on here. There we go. And so that was the first ship after the Mavi Marmara. So the Mavi Marmara I was on just as a passenger. Torreira I was the engineer. And the Greeks were stopping us from leaving the harbor because the Greeks were in financial difficulty. The Israelis leaned on them and forced the Greek government to stop us. So we couldn't get out of the harbor because the Greek Coast Guard were there. And it was we stuck out of the harbor. It's a long story. We put some kayaks in front of the Coast Guard boat and we stuck out of the harbor. And that's one part of it. But we're on the ship. and we're racing along trying to get to the 6 mile mark where we're in international waters, and the not the Israelis, the Greeks, doing the request of the Israelis are chasing us, and they eventually get on board and they stop us, and the engines are slowed down. I'm down in the engine room and I can tell, the gig is up. They've got on board, so I went upstairs and and everybody's really sad. So I asked one of the leaders, David of the Canadian Boat, the guy. I said, "Well, David, would it help if I disabled the engine for you so they can't actually sail it back?" He said, "Well, sure, yeah." So I nipped down into the engine room.
Is this David Heap, by the way? The David?
Yeah,
David?
yeah, David. I didn't want to use his name.
Oh, okay, sorry. Oops. I hope I didn't just make him lose his job or something.
Heap, Heep, different guy. Anyway, so I went down below, and this Greek commando is up on the bridge, and he's lording over everybody, and he's running the engines, and he's taking off. Well, I'm down below, and there was two great big huge cat engines on either side of me, and I'm in the walkway between. So he's roaring along at full speed to take us back. So I just reach up with each hand and I shut the engines back to idle. And of course, the guy up on the bridge, he cranks it back up into full bore. So I just reach up and I put him back into idle, pushing back and forth, back and forth. I guess the guy's going crazy on the bridge. So we have a tug of war, and finally, he overpowers me. He has a flunky actually leaning on the controls in the bridge, and so he thinks he's won because now he's got it full bore, and he's got one of his flunkies holding onto the controls to keep it full bore. So I reached down, I pulled a cotter pin, and I put one of the engines in reverse, one of the transmissions. So the one propeller is going one way, and the other propeller is going in. So we're going in circles.
Great.
And this commando's going crazy, and he had a pistol. They all had guns. This guy's got a pistol. He's waving it in the air, threatening. So the ship is going in circles, and I bail out of the engine room because I know they're coming to lynch somebody, whoever's in the. So I get out and I run upstairs, and I actually tear up my marine engineer papers. I throw them out the porthole. I get rid of them, and anyways, the Greeks are still going crazy. They try to tow our ship, and they can't tow it because we're too big, and they're going crazy. And finally, one of the activists, the leaders, comes to me, and I'm pretending to be on a computer, and I'm just pretending to do anything except work on the engine. Finally, this guy comes over to me, he leans over and says, Kevin, it says that we don't know what you did, but the Greek commandos are beside themselves. They're going crazy, waving guns around, and they're sending a tugboat from the Greek military base to tow us to the military base. And that's not good. We want to go to the civilian port back where we came from, St. Nicholas. So he says, Kevin, you got to start the engine properly and just give it to them running so they can run it back because we don't want to go to the Greek military port. So yeah, so I reconnected everything, and they sailed back to the main port. And anyways, enough of that war story. It's
I want an election observer story from Central America. Can you give us one? I mean, I don't want to make you tell the same stories you've told before, because I know that might not get you. Like I don't, that doesn't necessarily work, I've found. But I'd love to hear something from it. Sure. From Central America.
Sure. Okay. I was on the 2000 El Salvador election. It was they signed a peace agreement in 92. They had an election in 96, and then 2000 was the sort of the major elections. I think it was presidential and legislative, I think, and the mayors and everything. Anyway, so I went down as an official election observer with the FMLN to watch what was going on. And I met this San Peru Pedro La Pan or something, some little village, and they've got they got the election stuff all set up, and I'm walking around with my clipboard and my vest. It says International Observer, and my hat International Observer, and I'm standing at their election booth is just out in the courtyard. So they got this like a kid's desk made out of metal on 4 legs with a with a screen, metal screen on three sides, about this high up. So so they could take their ballot there and fill it in and then walk back in privacy. So I'm standing there watching the voting going on, and there's a right wing party there. They call it the Death Squad Party, PAN, PAN. It's the Death Squad Party. It's even further right than the Arena Party, which is whatever.
Wow.
Paul. Anyway, so one of these guys with his PAN shirt on, he's standing right at the shoulder of the people when they vote. And the deal is, he wants to know how they vote so they can deal with left-wingers later on. So he's standing right there, and I got pictures of him. So I'm busy taking pictures because they told us you cannot get involved in the election. You're an observer, nothing more, just observe. So I'm taking pictures. I'm trying to embarrass this idiot to back off, and I'm taking pictures. Finally, I got fed up. So I walked around and I stood. There was about a 1 foot space between this PAN idiot and the guy that's trying to vote. So I walked around and I slipped in right between the two of them. And this guy's looking at me and he's pissed off. The PAN, election observer, he's trying to look around me as if I am doing something illegal or wrong. Get out of my way. I want to see how this guy votes. And so we had a little dance back and forth with me getting in the way of this guy.
Astounding.
It was there were thugs and goons and
Kevin, speaking of thugs and goons, I wonder if I can jog your memory to the time that you first learned there. I believe it was in El Salvador. What a death squad looks like,
that's Guatemala.
Guatemala. Can you recall that little? There was a car chase involved as well.
Yeah. No. Okay. Yeah. That was '89. And that was at the height of things. '89. There was Bishop Romero died just not long before that. But I'm next door.
The November offensive in El Salvador. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm next. This happened in Guatemala. The government in exile was made up of 5 people, a couple of labor lawyers, 2 university deans, and maybe 3 university deans. Anyways, and Rigoberto Menchu, the Mayan leader. So there were the 5 of them, all living in exile. One labor lawyer was in Vancouver, so I accompanied her back, Marta Gloria Torres de la Vega. I accompanied. She was a lawyer for the Coca-Cola workers. Remember the big boycott?
Yeah, great.
That was her. So I accompanied her back to Guatemala, and they were invited by the government. So the 5 leaders went back to have peace negotiations with the government, and I was there as a human shield. I was there, and if they shot them, they'd have to shoot me, and that would look bad in the media back here because I was dead. Nobody would care about them, but shooting a gringo, that's touchy. Anyway, so we're off to a rally at university with I think 3 of the leaders, and one of the leaders, a former dean of the university, Rolando, he says, "Okay, Kevin, your job is to sit at the back of the van here, and you're supposed to watch out for death squad cars following us." So, okay, great. This is all new to me. So I'm back peering out the back windows, and every so often I stop and I say, "Oh, what about that car? What about that car?" And they'd say, "Look, oh no, that's nothing." And I said, "Well, what about that truck there? He's been behind us a while." They'd look, "Oh no, it's nothing." You're sort of dumb gringo. Clean up your act. Sharpen your eyesight. So we're roaring along, and then all of a sudden, this little Volkswagen van starts to accelerate slowly and starts to weave in and out of traffic. We're flopping back and forth. And I said to the guy, "Well, what's going on?" He says, "Well, the death squad's right behind us. Didn't you see them?" So, well, no. So there, that truck with a polarized windshield that you can't see through. That's the death squad. They're following us. Oh, okay. So we're roaring through the streets of Guatemala City trying to lose this guy. And we end up at the front of a lineup at a red light, right at one of those huge traffic circles. And the guy is caught in traffic about 4 cars behind us. So they're all yelling at the driver, and he jumps the red light, goes backwards around the circle, and goes up the other one-way road, like right opposite the death squad. There's just a median between us with curbs. And I've got my camera out already, and as we go by, he's got his window rolled down. You actually see him then, and he's a young fella, and I think there's 2 of them. A young fella behind the wheel, and he's hammering on the wheel and yelling, and he wouldn't look at us, but he's hammering on the wheel, just outraged. And I was so awestruck that this guy was so mad, I forgot to take a bloody picture. I was just learning this trade. Anyway, so we go roaring up the road, and things are, and the road is empty because we did a U-turn against the light, and so we got this whole big 3-4 lane highway going the opposite way, and we're just empty. And then suddenly the car starts to accelerate again, and they're all screaming and yelling. I look back, the guy in the pickup truck has jumped the median. He's jumped over the curbs, jumped the median, and he's hot after us again, down side streets this way and that way. And then finally we got back to the apartment. We all bail out and rush upstairs. And then, to wrap it up, that night, and I'm staying with all these folks in a little 2-bedroom apartment with 5 people and me, and I'm sleeping at the back doors or at the front door. So they got to get through me for what it's worth. And we're all getting ready for bed, and there's a phone call because the death squad has been phoning us, every day, over and over and over. They'd phone us, and I could tell it was the death squad because they'd pick it up, listen, and just simply hang it up without saying a word. Anyway, Ronaldo, the dean, he says to me, he says, Kevin, he says, the death squad has said there's a message for us at the front door, where the concierge, whatever, at the apartment building at the front door now says, just go down. If it's a package, leave it. If it's an envelope, just bring it up. We're all going to bed, so you just go down and pick it up. So I went down the stairs, elevator, walking out to the caretaker at the front door, just like a lobby for a hotel, and a big glassed-in lobby. And he's yammering and waving his hands in Spanish and talking, this gibberish so fast and pointing out the glass. And I walk down, I look out, what's going on? And I look out on the covered walkway, and there's leaflets all over the place. So, that must be the message. I'll go out, so I pick it up. Well, it's a message from the death squad. It's a death threat, like a typed out death threat. I thought, great. Well, I'll take it. Well, wait. I said, there's a lot of them. Hey, my friends in Victoria would like some of these as souvenirs. I'll pick up a few of them. So I walked along picking these things up. I had about a dozen of them all picked up, and I get to the end. I look up, and here there's an old wreck of a car with spray painting on the side of it, and there's an anti-tank mine, like a big, looks like a little cake. I've seen them in the movies. There's an anti-tank mine duct taped to the hood of the car. These guys are on top.
They're not trying to be subtle.
No, they're not trying to be subtle. And it's blocking the driveway down to where our car park is. And anyways, I thought, shit, they blocked our exit.
With an anti-tank mine.
With an anti-tank mine on it. So I went back upstairs with all my souvenirs and gave them one. And by the time I got up there, they had already knew about it. Oh yes, he says the death squad had phoned the police department, who had phoned the fire department, and the fire department had phoned them, so they already knew about it by the time I got back upstairs. So anyways, there was a gong show of media and police and fire trucks and bomb disposal. Hopefully. Bomb disposal. But just an interesting line to this thing. There's little, teachable moments. I want to get out of there. I thought, okay, great. There's a big bomb right below our window. I could look down on the bloody thing. I'm ready to go. These guys are all cool, all 5 of them. They're calmly getting, they're getting changed out of their nightgowns and, putting their ties on and, like looking like, retired deans and labor lawyers. They get all So I asked Martin, I said, well, what, aren't we in a hurry? He said,
Yeah.
no, we understand, we understand the levels of the threats, and they've raised it one level, but they've told the police and fire department about it, so it's not quite to the level they're going to kill us. And what they want to do, she said, they want us to rush out in front of the media in our night clothes and embarrass us, so that all the people in Guatemala can see how ridiculous we look. So we're not going to do that. We're going to get dressed in our finest clothes, go out in an orderly manner. And that's what they did. So they all marched out, and there was a million, because they contacted media as well, because that's what they wanted. They wanted to insult us. So the media were all there. We all go calmly walking past this car bomb. And anyways, so we stood outside for a while, and then the joke of it was within a half hour, say an hour, I remember he's going, but certainly within an hour, the bomb disposal crew had come. They found three anti-tank mines inside that car, defused them all, and then hooked it onto a civilian tow truck and took it away. The only way they could have done that quickly was if they knew where the bloody bombs were. Mm-hmm. So, off duty, they're death squad. On duty, they're the city police. So, or they're the bomb disposal squad. But anyways, So that was, like I say, teachable moment that they and eventually it got up to the point where they said the threats are too high, and they sent me home. And then they came home the day later. So anyways.
Mm-hmm.
Oh God, have I used up your hour?
Yeah, no, you still got to give me some more. If you can stand it.
Oh yeah, well, whatever.
Kevin, I don't want to bring up the most horrible memories. You've been to a lot of places where people have been waving around guns, a lot of places experiencing civil wars, and in your life traveling around the world, all this time, you actually have been shot once, but it was under very unusual circumstances for somebody who's done as much traveling as you have. And I wonder if you wouldn't mind telling us a little about this experience on the farm.
Oh well, that's back home, and I've been shot at and had guns put to my head a bunch of times. I ended up getting shot in Port Renfrew. Me and my late wife, we bought a piece of property in Port Renfrew, and I don't know if we even need to deal with this, but anyway, we bought the property, and back then Port Renfrew was very rural. It was like the Wild West. Had sort of a law unto itself, and an old logging community. Actually, it was just after. It used to be that you couldn't even live there unless you worked for the logging company. It was a company town, classic company town. So we bought property just a few years after the company pulled out. And anyways, a long story short, I sort of a right-wing nutball rented the property next door to me. He was a thief. He was threatening. His thing. He lived there his whole life. His dad was a logger, and I think he had been abused as a kid. And what goes around comes around, sadly. And anyways, so he thought he could threaten the neighbors and be the Lord of Island Road out there, the Lord of the area. And I didn't want to put up with him, so we organized like an RCMP police neighborhood watch, and made life miserable for him. And so one night when I was out on my property, he accosted me with him and his friend accosted me with rifles to try and threaten me and scare me, and we got into a yelling match, and they shot me with a 410 shotgun. So just about blew my arm right off. But luckily it was a solid slug, not a bird shot. Otherwise I wouldn't be here. But he shot me with a bird. Yeah, it was political in that I organized the neighbors into a block watch. We all protected each other. We isolated this violent, vicious fellow, and supported each other, and he didn't like it, and he Nobody, well, whatever. I think it was on purpose, but because they had me blinded with a pit lamping light right in the middle of the night, I couldn't see it. And all I know was the gun went off and broke my arm in two, and then it was 2 hours of ambulance ride back to Victoria. And back then, the ambulance crews couldn't give injections, so all they had was a bottle of nitric oxide for me. So,
wow.
Yeah, I sucked that dry pretty quick, and yeah. Anyways, that's that. Yeah. Anyways, that's
Kevin, does this experiences like that? I mean, I'm just kind of and where I'm going in a very circuitous way here is like, I mean, there's been with the election of Donald Trump and all the rise of the right wing in the United States in particular, but also in many other countries around the world. I mean, and then I'm thinking of like popular politicians like the Ford family in Ontario. I mean, does I'm just guessing that the guy who shot you might be a big fan of someone like Doug Ford, you know, and they're coming from a certain kind of orientation as a certain kind of white man from a certain kind of background, and I wonder if you got any thoughts on that and the current political climate. And I know you have a lot of familiarity with that milieu, as well as with the nice Finnish communists.
Yeah. Well,
who we'd rather have as our neighbors.
Yeah. It's well, it's well, we're doomed to repeat history if we don't learn it. This is just basic fascism coming back around again. And actually, I've had some arguments about this with people. Fascism comes from Mussolini, and Mussolini laid it out perfectly clear that fascism is a corporate controlled government. I mean, you can Google it and see him saying it, that's what it's all about: corporate controlled government, or government controlled by the corporations, whichever. And actually, it's a funny thing. Back in I remember many years ago, I wrote out the definition of fascism on a placard to hold up down at a demonstration in Victoria against a right wing government then, and it was the Oxford Dictionary definition of fascism, and basically I was trying to make the point is, read this. This is what we've got. It's fascism. If it walks like a duck and talks like a duck, it's a duck. What's interesting is if you go to the Oxford Dictionary, the definition has changed. The Oxford Dictionary does not mention corporate control of government. They talk about populism. They talk about right wing. Blah blah blah. But the core of this, I just finished reading a book regarding IBM and how IBM worked hand in hand with Hitler. To computerize his whole system, which was involved in categorizing the Jews and the communists and the gays and the census. All the censuses that Germany did from the moment Hitler got in were done by IBM, hand in hand. And they actually designed their machines and their punch cards, everything to cater to exactly what Hitler wanted to do. The identification of the races and pinpoint where all these people were and be able to that's why people say now, how the heck did they know where everybody was, and how did they sweep all these people up and put them on the trains? Well, they knew it because of IBM and the punch card technology that they used back then. And anyway, interesting book. If somebody wants to read a good book, read IBM and the Holocaust, I believe it is. And anyways, again, when you read this thing, you keep on saying, well, how could somebody do that? I mean, they knew exactly what they're doing. They knew exactly what their machines are being used for. Even before anybody, left wingers in the States and Canada understood what was happening, IBM knew, because they got the requisitions from Hitler and so what he needed, and they designed the machines and the punch cards just for that purpose. Anyways, so yeah, we're coming back around to corporate control. It's it's what's good for GM is good for America. It's and well, if Facebook wants to shut down, this podcast or anything else, well, that's just fine with the government, because that's
they now, as Glenn Ford of Black Agenda Report said, our communication is now corporate control of our communication is now hegemonic. I think that's a paraphrase, but yes. Yeah.
We're going to be going back to writing handwritten letters now to keep things secure, and sending, and not even using mail. We'll have to use our own Pony Express or something to relay information around or whatever. It's this technological revolution has produced the perfect bottleneck where they can tap in and control and mute and cancel whatever they want. And well, look, Australia, Facebook shuts down Australia. If a commie did that, holy smoke, there'd be war. I mean, if the Chinese dared to do that with anything, there'd be missiles going over. But Facebook walks in and shuts down, the major communication system for people in Australia. And the Australians, they realize very quickly, the government, time to knuckle under. These guys are playing hardball. What do they want? We'll give it to them. Yeah, it was like such an opportunity potentially to stand up to the complete dominance of social media, but then you would never. That's obviously not going to happen. We can't rely on Murdoch and his government to stand up to these giant companies. Yeah, really, that situation was really diamond cut diamond, because from what I can tell, maybe you can bring me up to speed on this. From what I can see, the Australian government, again, fascism, corporate, the Australian government was simply trying to make an international corporation that's based in the States pay some more money to, Robert Murdoch, who controls all the media in Australia. So it was really a case of diamond cut diamond. I mean, it was me and you weren't involved in this equation. It was simply one, and I'm sure there was a deal cut behind the scenes between one corporate, monster and another corporate monster, and I'm sure we lost.
Yeah,
we won't find out for a while, but I'm sure we lost. I can guarantee you that.
Yeah, absolutely. And incidentally, in the music world, these deals have already been made. The same kinds of deals that they are making with the Facebook and Australian government. In the music world, the big three record companies already made a deal with Spotify, and that's why they're comfortable with the new streaming model, and that's why because they're making most of the money.
Yeah,
of course.
No, that's right. You're dealing with it firsthand. Yeah, trying to. You got to work around the edges now, just like what you and everybody else in the progressive music environment are doing. They're trying to create your own. But be warned, if you start making money, serious money, they're going to shut you down, or they're going to tax you.
Yep. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah,
do you know many people have been deplatformed? I know, particularly in Britain, a lot of Socialist Workers' Party people who have been had their Facebook pages, canceled by Facebook. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. A lot of the traffic that I used to get, as far as
regular
reports, have vanished. Eva Bartlett. I don't know if you know Eva Bartlett.
Yep.
Yeah.
Did she get her account removed?
Oh yeah, she had to change it repeatedly to try and have any sort of anything on Facebook or whatever. They shut her down, and I'd get an email from her, and I click on the link, and geez, it's already gone.
Yeah.
And I clicked on it not long after I got the damn thing. But yeah, it's and we don't even hear about it.
No,
because they can't tell us.
Right, because everybody's on Facebook and nobody's getting information any other way. So when they're removed from Facebook, people are just like, "Oh, I wonder what happened to that person. I don't know.
Yeah.
Somebody should find out."
We'll have to get carrier pigeons. Maybe that's the next level up.
Carrier pigeons, that's good. Smoke signals, lots of radio.
Right. Oh my God.
How about a radio station?
Yeah. think the kids will know how to use it?
Right, I know. Well, the funny thing is that the main thing that I actually do with my phone, with my tablet, with my smart speaker is listen to the radio. But it's so sad we get these expensive devices so that we can use a flashlight and listen to the radio. It's like, why don't you just get a radio and a flashlight?
Oh dear. Yeah, you got to keep your Pacifica going. That's for sure.
Yeah, that would be good. Yeah. How about you got any during the pandemic? Any thoughts on what that has done to society around you or anywhere else in the world? I mean, you got any? Are you feeling? Is it leaving you feeling at all optimistic about the future in terms of the kind of mutual aid that's been going on and the kind of like understanding of the structural problems we got, or is it more?
Well, it shows me that if we really wanted to solve the problems, all the problems of the world, we could do it in an instant. The Bank of Canada right now is borrowing $1 billion a day, a billion with a B, $1 billion a day. The Bank of Canada is just making that money out of nothing. They're just creating it out of whole cloth, out of nowhere, and they're buying Canadian government bonds in order to keep the Canadian government afloat. So if we really wanted to have a living wage, if we really wanted to have health care for all, if we really wanted all these things, Victoria, the streets, the parks are full of people in tents. Full, it's there's people dying in the Beacon Hill Park, a block away from me. Just I could look out the window and see them. There's tents in Oaklands Park, right in my neighborhood, and this could all be cleaned up. If we spent $1 billion a day to solve those problems, they wouldn't be problems anymore. But heaven forbid that the stock market might crash. Let's create $1 billion a day. And rescue the corporate government, and we're just pikers. I mean the U.S. Federal Reserve. How much money? How many? What's it? Trillions? They just created $2 trillion. It's amazing. I mean, it's just a matter of typing it on a computer. 2.0000000 and hit send, and they make the money in. And so anyway, my point is that hopefully, people have connected the dots, and they can say, "Geez, we're able to do all this to fight the pandemic, and to save the stock market. Geez, couldn't we do that all the time for lots of other problems?" But we'll wait and see. I have my doubts.
It's leading a lot of people to reach those same conclusions and ask those same questions, and then what happens is another question, huh? But that's
Yep.
Very well put, Kevin. It's been such a pleasure talking to you.
I gotta put my mug up here.
Oh, great, excellent. Smile. You're let's see.
You are in Gaza.
You're in Gaza.
I got that at the I got that in Gaza.
Excellent. Good. And it's prison bars on that. Now I got my screen bigger. I can see you got prison bars across there. Smell. You're in Gaza. Yeah.
Free Gaza. Yeah. Yeah. They're good. Oh yeah. I still communicate with a few friends. Well, Madeleine Kulab, the Palestinian, the only Palestinian fishing captain down there. She keeps in touch with me, and things are things are bad. But
the Israelis don't let people go Palestinian fishing people go more than a couple miles out to shore, and now there's been a horrible environmental disaster.
Yeah. No, she lost her boat, her husband, and they were on her boat, and they were well within that limit. And the Israelis still came and attacked. She had to jump overboard, I guess, and they seized the boat and her future husband and took them to Israel, and her brother took them to Israel and tried to turn them into collaborators, which is what they do. They catch the fishermen take them to Israel, seize their boats, and they try and turn them into collaborators. If you collaborate, then you get your boat back. If you don't collaborate, then and they've never seen their boat. And her brother was killed in the Great March. He was basically executed by a sniper.
Kareem. The Great March for Return. People were protesting after Friday prayers every Friday, every week for over an entire year. And every Friday, the Israeli soldiers massacred unarmed civilians protesting there. Every Friday. And if you want to find out anything about it, you'll hardly find it outside of Al Jazeera.
No, it's like I say, poor Kareem. I met him when I was there, and when I met Madeleine, and he was the first mate on her boat, two of them. Yeah, and I met him. Anyways, he was fine young fellow, and he was, like I say, executed. He was murdered by the Israelis at the border, and they like I say, they seized her boat, seized her engine, and yeah, I mean things were bad, but if you can, it's hard. I mean, it's hard for me to fathom that she's saying things are much worse, and I can't fathom how bad it must be. I don't know how
hard to imagine. They have no water, right? Yeah. And it's like almost all the water in Gaza is totally undrinkable. It's basically toxic.
Yeah. And
there's still jet fighters doing overflights every hour of the night, every night, so that nobody can sleep through the night.
Yeah. They break the sound barrier, and there's drones flying over all the time. And the latest outrage, it boggles the mind. The one river or whatever that flows through Gaza, the main one. Of course, the Israelis have a dam at the border, so that when it flows from Israel, it doesn't flow right through because the Israelis dam it, and they use it for their own irrigation and whatnot. And then when the rainy season comes, and they use it for sewage disposal as well on the Israeli side. So when the rainy season comes and there's threats of flooding, the Israelis open up floodgates and they let a year's worth of water just rush into Gaza, and it floods all their fields, and and with toxins and sewage, and it's just it's just so spiteful. It's just so
spiteful. It's such
they're going out of their way,
right?
Be assholes. I mean, my dad always said, if the enemy's mad at you, you're on the right track. Well, I guess the Gazans, the Palestinians are on the right track, because the Israelis, I mean, if there's a choice of doing something and they got to spend a bit more money to make it even worse, they'll spend a bit more money and make the effect even worse to pummel the poor Palestinians. It's I'm just amazed. If in Canada, we had a softwood lumber dispute with you guys in BC, and it crippled us. And it was just an afterthought. The U.S. government, it was just on the back burner afterthought. Oh, we'll just put a tariff on softwood lumber, and it decimated our lumber industry in BC and the employment and whatnot. And everybody is hopping and screaming and yelling and suffering. And you compare that to what the people in Gaza are going through. I mean, it's or Cuba or whoever. It's anyways. Yes, is my hour up?
You're off the hook.
Well, I mean, I like I said to you, I just enjoy BSing with you. It's great to talk.
Yeah, me too, Kevin.
Looking forward to you getting back up here.
Me too.
Let me know when you're allowed.
Oh, absolutely. As soon as the borders open up again, I'll be planning a tour when that becomes possible. But in the meantime, it's nice to do these interviews and get to talk to people. I never make phone calls, so like when the pandemic hit and I was like, okay, I'm not going to talk to any other adults unless I really make, be intentional about it, so. And I always wanted to be a journalist anyway. So, yeah.
I just realized we're really less than 6 feet apart here. Should we be wearing masks?
Less than 6 feet apart, right?
Yeah, I mean,
on the world map.
Yeah, well, the camera is 3 feet from me, and same thing at your end. So,
right.
Yeah,
right.
I should have a mask on, I guess.
Have you been vaccinated yet?
No.
My parents got vaccinated. Is it getting around there?
No. somebody else outbid us and took all the vaccines. It's
Ah,
yeah,
I
yeah.
wonder who that was.
Geez, Israel has vaccinated everybody, and we're still waiting. No, there's no vaccine here.
Yeah, they vaccinated everybody except for the majority of the population that lives under occupation. just kind of like forget about that that
Yeah.
little 55% or whatever it is.
Geez, you're gonna get us knocked off the internet here if you keep talking like that. Boy, oh
Yeah,
boy.
well, I discovered at least some things to avoid on the internet. Like don't mention, you can't mention my favorite band in England. That the name of that band, I'm not going to mention that. That will get us kicked off of Facebook. But we can still talk about Palestinians, apparently, as long as you don't as long as you don't agree with Eva Bartlett's opinions on
Yeah.
on then you'll get kicked right off.
Yeah.
Really quite something.
It's a fine line.
But actually, it seems to me that the algorithms are even more problematic than the banning of people from these platforms. The algorithms is what makes us all argue with each other much more than what people actually say. It's the fact that the algorithms drive you to those statements rather than towards reasonable conversation. Being reasonable is not a Facebook thing. That's not. It doesn't make the money.
So an algorithm's controlling what I'm saying to you. I didn't realize.
Well, right. Well, I mean, when you write a paragraph on Facebook and it contains lots of argumentative types of statements, that'll drive way up. Whereas if you when I share the link of this interview, the YouTube link on Facebook. Hardly anyone will see that. But the fact that we're broadcasting on Facebook, people will see the broadcast on Facebook because they get to watch advertisements on the side of the screen while they're doing it. That's why we broadcast directly on Facebook, is so anybody sees us there. So it's very insidious.
Yeah.
All insidious. So insidious. But we will. Yeah, we better stop because otherwise we'll lose people. They say don't go more than an hour or else everybody just abandons ship. And then
don't say. Yeah. How many were on board to start with here?
Oh, we don't know actually. That's also, it's too mysterious because so many people listen afterwards. So it's it's too mysterious to even come up. And the number that we see on the screen isn't necessarily indicative of who's watching because it only indicates who's watching in certain forms and not in other forms. So
we know Mossad's watching and
so Mossad's watching. We can be sure that Mossad's
CIA's watching and
and at least and my five biggest fans are watching. We can be sure we have a dedicated 8 people for sure. 2 of them are intelligence agents.
Oh boy.
Oh. Take care, Kevin. It's been such a pleasure. I'll just wrap it up now. I'll be right back.
Sounds good.
And thanks, everybody, for tuning into this conversation with Kevin Neish, and organizer, activist, and unofficial comedian and wonderful storyteller in British Columbia. Red diaper baby. We never defined what red diaper baby means, but you can look that up if you want to find out what it means. And I will be back talking with more folks next week. Not on Friday because I have a dentist appointment, but I'll be back next week with more conversations with folks. And you can find this in podcast form if you look for This Week with David Rovics, wherever you get your podcasts, or on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/drovics. Look up the Discussions with David playlist for the archive. And thanks for tuning in, everybody. And remember, mutual aid will get us through. Trust your neighbors and don't pay the rent unless you really have to. And don't trust your neighbors if they come to you with a shotgun. Just your other neighbors. Okay, bye for now. See you soon.